Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Dear listener, I hope you're well. In this episode, I bring you a fittingly festive encounter. And on that note, as it's a busy and stressful time of year, I hope you're taking care of your well-being. One thing I'm trying to do is listen to my body when it's clear that I'm tired and trying not to override it and keep pushing through, like we often tend to do. Perhaps you could have a go at doing the same, responding and taking time to rest when you need to. Thanks so much to the group of patrons, the Curious crew, who support this show. Some really lovely people have been joining us lately, and shout out to Twyla, who joined the crew on the Weird Folk tier. If you can support us, please join us, and as always, if you like, subscribe and leave a rating for the show. That really helps, and a short review would be so great if you feel you'd like to do that. If you're interested in a tea rituals workshop to connect with Fae or learning shamanic qigong, please visit scarletofthefae.com to book on our courses starting in January with Todd Grube, previous guest on the show, who has had a multitude of experiences over the years. Now, on with this encounter. A man from Washington State describes hearing Santa's sleigh land on his roof, complete with the sound of sleigh bells, hooves, and a heavy sack and footsteps. At the time he was 20 years old and at college. He never had any strong belief in Santa, and his family generally took a skeptical view on strange phenomena. To this day he hasn't told his family, but like many others he is sure of what he heard, although he himself finds it rather bizarre. We all have a boggle threshold, where the idea of extraordinary phenomena is repelled by our brain's filter of improbability based on our beliefs, experiences, and willingness to consider what has previously remained outside our knowledge and level of understanding. I had heard stories of people seeing and hearing Santa before, but this is the first time I've spoken to someone directly about their experience. It turns out that many people have had these experiences, either in childhood or as adults. This was a really enlightening chat for me, and it has brought a sense of unexpected magic to this holiday. For that I am very grateful, and I hope you enjoy it too. Merry Yuletide, one and all. Time to
Well, I guess, let's see here. It happened about, I would say, little less than 10 years ago. It was in between, it was either 2013, 2014, or 2015. Just because I'm just kind of remembering the kind of the other things that are kind of going around along that time. Sort of the house hadn't quite been remodeled yet, and some of the local politicians that my parents really supported around that time. But yeah, kind of the date. But it was on Christmas Eve at, I believe it was around 9:00 at night. My family, we had just gotten back home. We just gone out and did a few things. I think we went and saw some Christmas lights, just kind of driving around through town. I think we went out to dinner, but we had gotten most family festivities out of the way a few days before, and it was just kind of a nice, relaxing day. And so what happened was, we're at night of how I was getting ready to go to bed, because it had been a busy day. Usually at that time, especially I had the time off from college, and so I was Normally I'd stay up a bit later, 10, maybe 11. But I was just feeling really tired that night. And so I just, I was kind of like, well, I'm going to have a busy tomorrow. Probably going to see a bunch of people. So, I just figured I'd get a little bit of a shut eye. And so I'm just in my bed, getting comfy. And then just on the roof, there's sounds like this shaking, loud thump noise. And it's very loud. It sounded like kind of like clomp, like if you think that, and then like kind of like a sled was kind of like sliding on there. And the one thing that was really weird is that there's a little bit of like jingling bell noise. And that was, it was. And then then after that happened, there was a moment of silence. And then what sounded like footsteps, like kind of like jumped down onto the roof and then walked around a bit. And then there was this loud thump on there that was like, it sounded like someone had been like dropped, like was carrying a bunch of really heavy stuff. And then they just dropped it down, just let it fall on the ground. And then, it was, and then walking back, it sounded like, I could hear the footsteps again. It sounded like it jumped kind of like, and then it was kind of like shaking, like whatever was on the roof, like whatever was walking had jumped on top of it. And then the bells rang again, just kind of a little jingle noise. And then it sounded like kind of like hoof sounds. Could hear them start to sound like they ran just really briefly. And then sounded like kind of a sliding, kind of like harsh kind of sled noise, kind of slid a bit. And then it was gone. And I remember just listening to it, and I had no idea what that. For a moment, I thought that, someone's trying to break into the house. And so I was kind of like putting the covers over my head, like that. But then there's kind of silence there. And I was just like, that did not just happen, did it? There is no way that just happened, but it did.
That is utterly bonkers, though, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing. Because
it was, I had no words to describe it, and it was just like, it was just like, at that moment, it was just like nothing. Like you could have told me that, the sky was purple, and dinosaurs were walking around. Like my entire idea of what the universe was supposed to be like was, in that time was just like that's not possible, but it happened. And so, it's such a weird thing. And I ended up, just kind of the next day, I didn't kind of put that in the back of my mind. Nothing had, just kind of, walked around the house a bit later, that day, just to make sure, and no one had actually tried to break in. That's what I was thinking, either an animal or a person. Because, I just know that, and during the holidays, there's always, the big issue of a lot of burglaries just because people are out of town. And so, but I just kind of walked around. There was no damage or anything to the house. No footprints in the snow. And it was just like whatever had been on the roof had just landed on there and taken off.
Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress, and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com. Amazing. So what part of the house were you in then? Was this your bedroom or was it another room in the house?
Yeah, so it was in my bedroom. My bedroom at the time was on the second floor, on the top floor, at the end of the hallway there. So it's just kind of under the roof and kind of off to the side. Like the chimney was more towards the middle, and then, but yeah, it was very. It's kind of in the corner of the house. So I felt like if I would have heard something climbing up, I definitely would have been able to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because I was just kind of in my head, I was just kind of running through like what it could have been like, because I know the neighbors always like to feed the birds a lot. That always been a big problem with my parents because especially during the summer, because the birds would always land in the yards and they'd poop on all the yard furniture and stuff like that. But because of that, though, I knew what it sounded like when they were on the roof. And it didn't sound anything like that. They just kind of the really light kind of jump around, maybe kind of peck at the shingles. So it wasn't a bird, it wasn't a squirrel, but it had mass to it. Like the footsteps I heard they were heavy. The landing and sliding down, that was heavy. It was definitely some kind of like solid weight to it. And other than the jingling, and then the very like the steps and the that was really the only noise with it. There wasn't any. It didn't really interact with the kind of environment it was in. Like it. To be honest, I don't even think it knew I was listening to it. I guess I'm trying to think here, but yeah, it didn't say anything to me. Didn't say anything. It was just silent, other than just the sound of its activities.
So this, is it a flat roof then, or was it a pitched roof?
So it's a Cape Cod design house. It has a slanted roof.
Okay. Is this, I'm being a bit ignorant here, but is that just kind of allow the snow to slide off?
Yeah.
Gently?
Just kind of in general, or usually more like rain. Right. It's more common in like kind of the areas where in like the Northeast and Northwest, where there's a lot more rain, a lot more wind, lots of leaves, especially. Yeah, the roofs, a lot of the houses where I'm in the Pacific Northwest.
I see.
And so, it rains so much that like our neighbor behind us, they had a flat roof on the garage, and it would like puddle, like there'd be huge there, and there'd be ducks on there. It's like that can't be good for the foundation, but
that is the thing with those flat roofs. So how old were you at the time?
So
you mentioned you were at college, so
I was probably at that time, probably around 20.
Yeah. And so you were in your bedroom.
And that's correct.
Yeah, and were there, I got to ask, were there presents? What were your presents that year? Do you know?
I'm trying to think, because it was kind of at the point I was starting to be able to buy stuff on my own. And so, when you're an adult, it's a bit harder, that then, kind of the gifts usually turn into things like, taking someone out to dinner kind of thing. But I definitely always got really nice gifts for Christmas. It was always that was always nice. There's a lot of things in my life that weren't great, but I always got lots of stuff. So Christmas was always a nice time for me.
And what about that particular Christmas? Was there anything about that particular Christmas that was different?
No, it was actually kind of interesting because it was kind of in the middle of like times that were very intro.
But
Like
sorry,
later on,
very difficult, did you say?
well, more just kind of not necessarily maybe difficult, but just kind of life impacting. Like
Okay.
I ended up meeting my partner the next year, I
Mm.
believe. Just we just started being friends. It wasn't until quite a bit later that we got together.
Oh,
And
that's
then the
nice.
year
Yeah.
before that, yeah, I'd been finishing up high school and some other things.
Mm.
But that was kind of in that time period was kind of a few years was kind of a lull of
Mm.
just kind of you know I'd finished being in grade school and was just kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I tried a few things that didn't work out. I
Mm.
tried being an English teacher around that time because I thought it would be fun to go to another country and teach English. And I
Mhm.
really liked all the people that I worked with, but I just wasn't cut out for the paperwork part of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I mean that was kind of disappointing. But yeah, no, it's just thinking about it, it's just very. I don't know if I can really say that there's like a higher kind of purpose for it. Um,
Mm. Mm.
is that because I guess just kind of the way I was seemed like my reaction to it, like I didn't get a sense of like this means something kind of thing. It was very
Mm.
much like what is this thing? This is it's just like if I'd seen some like rare animal that had people thought went extinct years ago,
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
walk across the way. And so I was just kind of thinking about that of how like there's always the stories of like the black dogs.
Mm.
And I was just thinking that if seeing one of those, it's maybe it's an omen, maybe your uncle's gonna pass away in a few days, but maybe it's also that there's just a animal from another dimension is walking there, and
Mhm.
it it has a different, its body's made of something different, but it's maybe it just has a little ghost dog puppy off in the corner that it's worried you're getting too close to. And
Mm.
um
Mhm.
I kind of think it's maybe more in that kind of I guess what's the word, kind of sense, in that I don't feel like it was trying to teach me anything. I think it
Yeah.
was just sort of doing its thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was your belief around Father Christmas, Santa Claus, growing up?
Um, the
Excuse
thing
me.
is, I really didn't have one. To be honest, it was kind of funny of how, growing up, some kids would be like, "Oh, Santa's real." I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense," and then other kids would be like, "Santa's fake." I'm like, "Huh, that makes sense."
Yeah.
I guess it's funny. It's like it didn't really sink in to me. Like I didn't really have a strong belief. It was just something that was just kind of there.
Yeah.
Um, I know my mom always really liked the idea behind Santa.
Okay.
She was a teacher. She retired a few years ago. But yeah, her school would always, she was very big on they had the giving tree for the less fortunate families.
Yeah.
Could put something for their kid wanted, and she always liked to buy lots of stuff for that. But yeah, it's funny. And then my dad, um, he just always hated the holidays. Like
Yeah.
just the traffic, the getting together with family, the Christmas music, the lights. Like I don't think he didn't mind the concept of it. It was just he didn't like he just found the all the commercialism and all the family expectations was just very excessive. And I remember one time we were traveling for visiting my grandma in Arizona, and it was just like, next year let's go to a Buddhist country for Christmas.
I think a lot of people feel like that around this time. For some people, they just dread all the nonsense that goes with it, and it. Yeah, I can understand. I can understand when people get really fed up. It sort of gets really stressful, and seeing your family is really wonderful, and yet when you do, sometimes it's quite heavy too. It's quite sort of a bit stressful. Um, but nevertheless, you know. we love them very much, don't we? But sometimes it's
Yeah.
nice to kind of like go home again afterwards. Or
Yeah, I
uh,
always think, there's a reason why you only see some of these people a few times a year.
exactly. Yeah, that's nice though with your mum. Did you ever tell her what you'd experienced?
Um, no, I found that this is just not something I can really talk to about with people unless I know they'll be able, to, even if they don't maybe might not believe me, they'll at least believe that I've experienced something.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's just it's just, as someone that has a college degree and works in a bit more educated field. I don't feel that this is something I can really talk with my coworkers or kind of people I know about, unless specifically I knew that they were interested in things that are maybe supernatural or a bit more spooky. Um, uh, because it's like, and I'm sure you probably found this of how, if you talk about something like ghosts or aliens, people might roll their eyes, but there's at least kind of a cultural understanding that regardless of whatever the nature of it is, people kind of have experiences like that. And then you get to something like fairies, it's people start to think it's like, okay, do you kind of have a problem?
mm,
Um, and so
yeah,
what was interesting, so I looked it up. I just because I was like, I
yeah,
was wondering, if anyone else had something like
mm,
this too, because I was just thinking that I
mm,
remember that I had heard warnings of people saying that if you go to like an area with foxes and you're not prepared for that, they're some of the vocalizations they make, it can sound very like human.
mhm,
And so there's been times when like people will be like hiking in the woods and they get lost and they start hearing what sounds like witch cackling,
mm,
and they start to get very like confused. So
mm,
I was just wondering, maybe is there something that could be like confused with like a sled noise or like people walking or something that maybe
yeah.
there's like some kind of like owl or something that made some weird sound. And so I just kind of looked it up online. It's like, has anyone seen Santa Claus? And so
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of kind of sightings like these, but I did find a few blog posts people had of, and um, there's been a few other people have kind of seen had kind of experiences like this. Some people have had
Mm,
like visual ones where they've seen them in their house, supposedly,
mhm,
sometimes as kids, sometimes as adults. But what I thought was really interesting about it is that for them, like me, it was very strongly the feeling that this isn't actually him. He's not a physical being who lives at the North Pole. It was something that was taking on this form. Um, and what a lot of the other people were saying or writing about was that they had a very like a sense of like dread of menace from it. Like it was like as one person was saying that there's this idea that that like spirits have to be invited in, like shadow children, like at people's doors.
mm,
They're
mhm,
always begging to come in, but they're saying is that because that Santa Claus or whatever the country's Christmas time gift giver is that is already invited in, so that if something that's maybe malicious wants to take that form, then that would be a way for it to get into our homes.
mm.
um, Now, personally, I didn't experience that. For me, it was very
No.
neutral. It was very, it was just sounded like something was there.
Mm. What did it feel like emotionally to you? Did you feel it in your body, and how did it feel to you?
Well,
I know you just
first it
mentioned
was,
it.
oh
Mhm.
yeah, it was just kind of a little bit, it was kind of a little bit scary for the when it first happened, because it was like, because I wasn't sure exactly what it was. So I just kind of went quiet and just kind of was still. And then kind of after it went away and there wasn't any more noise for a few minutes, I just kind of relaxed a bit. And I was just like, I was just very, very confused. And I was just like, I have no idea what that was. But yeah, I didn't feel like, but like after the initial sound, I didn't feel afraid at all. But nah, I just it just really left more questions than answers.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. When it walked, did it walk? I don't know if your house was detached or semi-detached or terraced or was it on its own or was it attached to another house? Your house?
Well, it's on its own.
It's on its own, right? Okay. And was it walking in the direction of the edge of the roof or walking in the direction of over another room in the house, like someone else's bedroom in the house?
So it sounded like it landed on top of the hallway between my room and the upstairs bathroom.
Hmm.
And then it sounded like it walked towards the middle of the house.
Hmm.
Um, and then it sounded like then it just walked back from the middle of the house back to where it came from.
Mm. And is the chimney in the middle of the house then? If you had a
It is.
chimney. It is. Wow. This is so funny. Did you sort of have a look downstairs you know, in the lounge to see if
Um,
anything had come down the chimney?
I did. Yeah, because later on, when I eventually kind of calmed down a bit more and went to get myself a glass of water, I went down there and yep, there were presents out there.
Yeah. And did you, I mean, were there ever any presents that were not from your family? Like there weren't any
No,
surprise
it was
presents?
no. My parents and I, we always have a thing where one of our presents to each other will always just put down from Santa.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, we
it's
do that too.
yeah, but yeah, no, nothing. Nothing out of the ordinary or anything like that.
No surprise gifts. What about for your mum? What kind of Christmas did she have that year?
Um, I don't really remember. I think it was a fairly standard one
Mm.
for her.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure she probably had feelings about me growing up and being in college at that time.
Yeah, was that your last? Well, I guess probably not, but was that the last Christmas you spent in your house? I guess you were already at college anyway.
No, I was living at a home for that time. I just kind of commute. I was going to community college at that time.
Ah, okay.
I didn't move out until my partner and I moved in together
Hmm.
for our apartment when we were uh, going to a 4-year university after
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So it wasn't that next year then. You had another couple of Christmases at home.
yeah, I had a few more years.
Hmm. Is there anything about the area that you live in that you think could be connected with it? Is there kind of folklore in the area at all?
Um, it's interesting. I tried to look it up, but honestly, it's kind of not really. There was a because I was kind of trying to look around to see, is there anything weird about where I was living at? And
Yeah.
no, it was a house that was built and um, they subdivided one of the old homesteads in the 20s.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, one of the I tried to look. There was there's one of the oldest churches in the state is a few blocks down the road. So I was thinking, well, I knew about ley lines, so it's like, well, maybe there's something with that. And so I just tried to did like looked at a satellite map of the area, and nothing else really interesting there.
Right. Hmm.
So I kind of crossed that idea out. Really, the only thing I'm trying to think of is that I mean, there's a few buildings in town that are supposedly haunted. Um,
Mm.
uh, I guess I was trying to think, um, but no, not really. It was just kind of a very kind of standard American suburb.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. If you listen to the chat at the end of this episode, you'll hear that our guest actually contacted me a few days later and said that they had, in fact, found out that their state, Washington, had the third highest rate of UFO sightings, particularly in the 14-mile radius near their hometown. So check in for that at the end. I have heard rumours for many, many years that, in fact, Father Christmas was, in fact, real, in that people had experienced him, his presence. People swear that they have seen him. People swear that they have heard him. People swear that they have been in bed and seen something going through the sky and heard bells, and that people do, experience him. I've never properly researched into it, but I have been aware of that for a long time. And you know, with the whole Father Christmas thing, I'm kind of split really, because I have three children, and two of them are grown up now. And when they were little, we went in for the whole Father Christmas thing, and then, at the point when they would full on ask me, "Mum, is he real?" I would say, no, he's not. When they'd got to the age where they were asking that question, I didn't string it out anymore. If they actually asked me straight, is he real? I would say no. But other things are real, because what I was always concerned about is that if we tell our kids things that, are real, and then we keep stringing it out, yeah, it's real, of course it's real, of course it's real. Like, for instance, Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy. When the kid, and it's usually around the age 11 in my experience, or some sort of 9, 10, 11, they would say, are they real? And you continue to say that they are, and then they find out that they're not real. It's as if they throw that whole idea away, that anything, because usually the only thing that they relate to, superstition, or the idea of these characters that we can't see, that are magical and that are able to be, present in some way, but they're too magical for us to understand, all of that kind of thing. If suddenly they are faced with the idea that they were lied to all that time and it was all make believe, and they don't exist at all, it's almost a means of them closing down to the possibility that there are things in this world that do have a presence that we might not see, and that they do function in magical ways that we don't quite understand. So I've kind of been quite torn between, I don't want to ruin the magic for my kids at Christmas. I remember how magical it was to believe in Father Christmas when I was a kid, and I don't want to take that away from my kids. So I would always say yes, like I say, but personally, that's how I approached it once they were ready to know that, he wasn't. But maybe he is.
That's the thing, because one of the things I've always for like when people have talked about like thought forms or tulpas, the go-to example that people always say is that Santa Claus, that he's that people, lots of kids around the world believe in him, that people go to the mall, dress up, people give people gifts and say it's from him, and then does that over centuries with millions of people, does that make him real in some sense? And I think the difficulty is that, how do you define real? Because there's so many different ways that things exist on. For like, are people's rights real? They're not a physical thing, but and so I'm with you on this one, that it's actually my partner and I were thinking, if we ever adopt a kid, we're gonna adopt an older one, just because being for a variety of reasons. But one of them is that they'll just pre-come with the knowledge that there's not a physical Santa Claus. We don't have to pop that balloon. But
it's hard, isn't it? It's really difficult.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I very sort of cynically imagine that that was a way of sort of, like you say, popping that balloon in their minds that magic is absolutely real, and that these things, that we are surrounded by these beings that we can't see. And so I feel really wary about that, you know. What do you think? What do you think it was?
I guess what I would imagine is, um, well, just thinking it, I feel like it had to be intelligent, in the sense that, it couldn't just be, just some nature spirit that was just acting on instinct. It was something that knew about the traditions of Christmas time, and um, that of the idea of Santa with a sleigh and reindeer and jingle bells on it. But I don't think it would. I don't know if it was. I guess honestly, I think I used this word in the email to you, but I think it was probably ultra terrestrial, in the sense that it was probably from a different dimension than ours. And that in that sense, it was an alien, but not like an alien that lives on like Mars or something like that. It was perhaps something from, another world, maybe the same world that the ancient Celtic people thought that the fairies lived in.
Mhm.
And that perhaps it just came over because it had the ability to, on a time that maybe seemed fun. I maybe it was drawn here for some reason, or perhaps the universe, if there's someone like myself who wanted to, either consciously or subconsciously, either wanted or needed a experience of something greater than myself, maybe that just gets paired up with some being out there that has some other need too. But I guess I just don't have enough information to really, guess what its true nature was, or what it wanted.
Mm.
It's just, kind of like in the, old kind of fairy stories. It's just, it's almost like a force of nature that exists within a being, and that it just exists and does what it wants to.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that if this being, if its function, if its existence is to, maybe bring joy to people, and, perhaps what it did when it walked over to the chimney that night was to sprinkle some joy down the chimney for you and your family. And I don't know whether you had a particularly joyful Christmas that Christmas, but it sounds like, you later met that year, met your partner. And so that was something that was going to be really important in both your lives. Do you think that it could have brought some kind of fortune to you and your family that year?
It's possible that could have happened. Yeah, I had been through a spiritual awakening a few years before, when I was in high school. Yeah, I had never had any sort of supernatural encounters when I was a kid. I know a lot of times people say that a lot of times children are better able to, perceive, other worlds and other beings out there. That was never the case for me. But yeah, just kind of, it was kind of, I mean, it certainly didn't bring any bad luck at all, but it very well could have. Yeah, but just kind of thinking back, just nothing really stood out very strongly.
Oh, it's a really lovely story. Yeah, I wonder, it may well, maybe the meaning of it might make sense to you one day, but how do you feel about having had that experience?
Um, it's, I guess I'm not really sure what to make of it. Honestly, it kind of brings me back to like the feeling of when it happened. That I didn't I guess I don't really feel a strong like moral attachment to it. It was just it happened suddenly, and then it was gone. And yeah, to this day, I've tried to think of all sorts of things what it could have been like, and no, it just defies explanation.
Do you know, I really feel very grateful that you shared this story, because maybe I will continue to tell my youngest that he is in fact real, because people have experienced him. And even though we might not have experienced him ourselves, you do so, of course, within the love that we give to one another at Christmas. And just even though obviously family, as we've said, it can be full on. And I think there's something that happened with lockdown as well. You realise those people in your lives that meant so much to you, and it really made you realise that how much people, certain people, it's quite surprising sometimes, because there were people that they weren't necessarily people you think were going to be important to you, but suddenly they really were. It kind of made you realise that those times. And perhaps its function could have even been that you're sharing the story now, that people really need to hear this.
Yeah, it could be. And it's interesting. And I do wonder about, that it was kind of at a time when I had first kind of was beginning to have a psychic experiences. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder if the fact that I was able to perceive it in that way, if that was related to it at all.
Our guest goes on to describe his premonition experience and an angel encounter on an exclusive episode for patrons. Find us at patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.
At the time I had just recently become Wiccan, and so it's really interesting how the Santa Claus being there really kind of, I don't know, I thought it was kind of funny, because one of the things that a lot of pagan parents, like you were saying, of how like talking to your kids about Father Christmas, whatever, but then you add on like having a different kind of spiritual background than the mainstream, and having different kind of values, and a lot of times talking about like for them, like they're saying, like some people talking about how they have Santa, but Santa doesn't give out coal if you're naughty, because he just gives out presents either way, because it's fun to have presents. But one of the things is, I've just kind of been reaching out to different people to talk about kind of spiritual experiences, because I don't have anyone that I can really do that with in my day-to-day life. And so there's been some kind of ups and downs with that, but I've been able to meet some interesting people. Where I live is it's a pretty interesting place. So we're actually not too far from Mount Rainier, which is the place where I don't know if you've heard of that. Where Kenneth Arnold, the Air Force pilot, was flying over, and he saw the what he called the flying saucers.
Yeah, where it all began.
Yeah, it's and so it's just in an area which has a very where kind of mainstream religious belief isn't as strong as it is in a lot of other parts of the country, but there's a lot of belief in more kind of New Age is a lot stronger. A lot of kind of paganism is a lot stronger. A lot more kind of unorthodox forms of Christianity are stronger. And so there's always lots of people I found to talk about experiences of that sort.
Yeah.
And so I feel really fortunate in that way, because a lot of people don't always have communities where you can talk to people about these really out of the ordinary things that happen to you.
Totally. Yeah. No, that sounds really great. Did you say that when you found your belief system, how did that relate to the experience? Was it kind of afterwards? Was it while that was happening? What
It was
was?
a few years before. I had a
Oh,
very kind of the time kind of around puberty, a little bit before, was very, very hard for me.
mm,
There was a lot going bad in my
yeah,
life, and I didn't
yeah.
get any support from the people that should have been there to support me. So,
Sorry, so
um,
so sorry. And this is something that,
yeah,
yeah, I really feel for young people of all ages when, they really don't feel supported. We need so much more support for our young
yeah,
people.
but I felt I felt this a strong presence that there was something else that was there that made itself known to me, that that there was more than this,
Mm,
and that it it saw what was happening to me, and it wasn't going to dismiss what I had gone through.
yeah.
um and so that was just kind of, and that was the beginning of a long kind of time of figuring that out. That's
Mm,
probably a discussion for another day, but yeah, it was just, but it was kind of early along my kind of journey of, I guess, into the supernatural.
mm.
But but at that time, nothing had happened like this. Like
No,
before,
no.
it was just all kind of like, dreams, kind of premonition stuff. But this was like a physical thing that,
Yeah, yeah, totally. Do you know, the one thing I wanted to ask you as well, I'd forgotten. Do
oh,
you remember what you dreamt that night?
I did not. I I find that I'm not I don't really keep a dream journal too much, just because I've had a lot of I found a lot of dreams are quite distressing for me.
Mm, mhm.
This kind of stuff I've been trying to work on, but generally I find that if there's something I really a dream that really stands out, I'll remember it really well.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, usually no. It was just I think honestly, I think I was just so tired. I just I just probably didn't really have much of a dream. Just probably just slept the whole
Mm.
time.
And that's quite interesting that Mount Rainier is quite near then. So there's kind of, stuff going on in the sky, unknown stuff going on in the sky. So that's kind of a connection, isn't it? If we were going to look at it
Yeah,
like that, It's what happened with Kenneth Arnold. And that was the same house, right? Near Mount Rainier.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. You can see, go out in the backyard and see it out there on the horizon. It's just huge.
Oh, wow. What a lovely place to live. Oh, well, yeah, thank you so much. It's really got me thinking, and I'm going to do some research on this. And I would love to learn more. And I just wonder if other people have. Um, my, I don't know if it's both my son and my daughter, or if it's just my eldest daughter, says she swears she definitely heard Father Christmas sleigh bells one Christmas night, Christmas Eve. I'm going to ask her about that again. So she is going to love hearing about this. Because although I used to kind of creep round and leave coins and do all that kind of thing, um, I always have to stay up to about 3 in the morning until they're definitely, definitely asleep, and then tiptoe in with the bag of presents and trying not to wake them. I did all
And
of
then they
that, but
wake up at 6 in the morning and go, "Mommy, mommy."
exactly, just
Yeah,
exhausted.
one of the things that I saw when I was just kind of looking up to see if anyone else had experiences like that is, yeah, the like the sleigh bells are a really a hallmark of those kind of experiences people have. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, especially just not even just like ringing constantly, but just very like kind of announce its arrival and then kind of announce it leaving.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Cool. Oh, thank you so much. This is really, really wonderful, and it's got me on another thought process with this now. So, yeah, I think I really needed to hear this.
Well, thank you for talking with me.
Yeah, keep in touch. And if you hear, I mean, I was going to say, if you thought of it, maybe you could ask your parents if it ever felt right. And obviously, you will know whether it feels right or not. But maybe ask them what their grandparents' relationship was with the supernatural. Because I just wonder if there's any stories hidden there that your grandparents might have had. Because, we just don't talk about these things until sometimes, when the older members of our family are gone, and then we really wish we had asked. It always seems like there's always going to be another time, another opportunity to ask, and sometimes there isn't. So, if it ever felt right to ask your parents what their parents, if they'd ever had anything unusual happen, or any, what their belief systems were, and if they ever had any supernatural experiences, might be worth asking them, because there could just be something hidden there that would be really nice for you to know about.
Yeah, that would be good.
Time to renovate. Time to renovate.
What a fascinating experience. Big thanks to our guest for sharing this very personal story with us. It's something that he doesn't usually talk about unless he knows the person will understand. I did actually apologise to him afterwards for my immediate reaction when I said, "That's totally bonkers." I felt quite astounded by his story, and it's not something I have personally experienced. But I was shocked by my own response, as I know how it feels for someone to move into a state of incredulity when you describe personal extraordinary encounters. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, this is a good example of a boggle threshold in action. This term was originally coined by historian of psychical research Renee Hayes to describe the point at which the mind boggles at the idea of certain phenomena, beyond that individual's current personal understanding or awareness. As a result, researchers may initially or permanently exclude or invalidate certain phenomena from being considered of value. I'm used to speaking to people about their fairy experiences, and for me, the idea of Father Christmas potentially being real isn't something I've thought about for a long time, and it caught me by surprise. I had heard of a number of accounts of Santa experiences over the years, but my own boggle threshold filtered them out of my own research radar, until now. And this is why it's so important that in any line of study we remain open. Not that we will consider that every story we are told is true, only that we remain open to the possibility that it may be, and we check our own limitations. For me, the story we've just heard felt compelling, and I was interested in looking further into it. In fact, after I finished this interview, I found some reported testimonies online which I'll share in the show notes. Next, I headed into the Modern Fairy Sightings project and podcast group and shared my newfound interest in the subject. It turns out that quite a few folks there had also had Santa Claus or Father Christmas experiences that they hardly ever discuss because they're simply not taken seriously. One aspect I was interested in during the interview was the location that it took place in. Now, intriguingly, our guest contacted me afterwards with the following message. They said, "I came across something today that was very interesting that I had no idea about. Apparently, it was no coincidence that my experience occurred where it did. Check this out. My state, Washington, has the third highest rate of UFO sightings in the US. The two states with more sites, California and Florida, are both much bigger and have a higher population, so that makes sense, but Washington has sightings at a higher rate than the national average. But those sightings aren't evenly distributed. In a country comparable to the continent of Europe in size, they're concentrated in a 14-mile radius. The picture below is blurry, but look at the left edge of the rectangle. It's my hometown." They attached two links, one from Axios Seattle with the headline, "Washington is #1 state for UFO sightings," and a report from a local news radio about the high number of UFO reports made to the National UFO Reporting Center by Washington state residents. It had a fun map. I'll pop it in the show notes. There's also a great link to an audio recording of a sighting being reported to the centre in 1976, which is really cool to listen to. So is there something about this area that makes it more likely that these sorts of phenomena occur? And if so, do Santa and other beings use these window areas as pit stops? Of course, I'm kidding, but really, who knows the answer to why particular areas attract higher rates of phenomena than other places do? Perhaps our ancestors knew the answer, as they tend to have built structures in such landscapes, and these continue to be hotspots for encounters with otherworldly beings and anomalous light phenomena. I hope you enjoyed this chat. Please share on with anyone else you think might find it interesting, and please also leave a review. Our guest shared a further 2 experiences with us, and you can listen to these on Patreon. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a very merry Yuletide with loved ones, and if this time of year is difficult for you, then know that you are never alone. You are always loved by someone, including those who have moved on from this earthly plane. And it's a strange old plane. There's lots of nonsense and distraction about, but I like to think that, despite all of that, we're heading towards better times. In the meantime, remember that it helps to connect within. Find your community, stay true to yourself, and always remain curious.